And we're live. Awesome. All right. Well, so this is not the start of the podcast and interview yet. We'll do a little intro here in a second. I just want to say what's up to our community members who have joined. Christian, Zenboy, good to see you. Thanks for hanging out. If y'all have any interesting questions along the way, please feel free to throw them in. I'll try to get to them. Can't promise that I'll get to them, but definitely shoot them over. So why don't we get started? Welcome, everybody, to the Nouns Icon interview. Today with me here, we have Prof. Werder and we have Garth Lee. Garth is part of the Jump community. He's also part of the Nouns community, a very active and interested member. And then Prof. Werder is just, I guess the name kind of says it itself, the professor.
The Nounish professor, that's me.
The Nounish professor in multiple ways. So let's kind of get to know, actually just to start, we're talking a lot about nouns. So for people that don't understand nouns, or literally just is just their first introduction, let's go ahead and the simplest explanation. What is nouns? And then we'll go into both of y'all's stories and all the interesting things that are happening in the ecosystem.
So Nouns is a decentralized autonomous organization, which means that we have a group of folks who have various levels of voting power within our organization. We have an auction every day. So it's one noun every day, forever. And all of those funds go automatically, once the auction is settled, go automatically into a treasury. That treasury is managed by the nouns holders. Each noun is a voting token. So it's equal to one vote. And that is how we move funds from the treasury via proposals. So if you are interested in, you have an idea and you want nouns to fund it, you find some nouners to help you put a proposal on chain. The nouners vote on it and say yes or no. And if we say yes, you get the funds directly into your wallet. It's all done on chain. So it's a little different than a lot of DAOs, where everything is pretty, transparent on chain. You see everything. And it's also different where, you don't have a lot of multi-sigs managing the funds. Occasionally we have some that are funds get dispersed to them, but it's not like the whole treasury is being managed by 5 people. It's being managed by everybody. And it's a truly decentralized approach in a way of doing DAOs a little differently.
I mean, to me, it's got to be the best in class example of a group of people that don't know each other, that are managing millions and millions of dollars and putting them.
Where are we at today? 55 million, something like that.
55 million. That's
28. We're usually somewhere in the ballpark of 28,000 ETH in the past year or so. So
that is Nouns, the organization. Now tell me just a little bit about Nouns, the characters, and what is that on your head?
These are noggles. So these are the Nouns classes, and at the very core of this whole thing is an art project, right? This is a CC0 art project. So that means that anyone can use these and our NFTs in their own art, in their own projects, in their own branding. So you do not need permission from us. You can go ahead and do it.
Okay.
If you want money, you do need permission.
Yeah. This is awesome. This is awesome. Before we go any further, we've got to get your background. We've got to learn a little bit about you. We've got to understand how deep you are in this massive global organization. And then obviously we've got Garth here. Garth, we're going to toss it to you next to learn about you and your role, both in, you're active in Jump as well as in the Nouns ecosystem. So Prof. Werder, just tell us a little bit about yourself and then how you got involved in Nouns and kind of your role within the ecosystem.
Yeah, so I always say I came in through the side noun door instead of the front door, because my first entry into the Nouns ecosystem was through a project called Side Noun. And it's these cute little nounish figures. I was already aware of nouns, but obviously I didn't have, at that point, I think they were going for 100+ ETH. So obviously not happening. So I found side nouns pretty early on in that project. It was actually through Poapathon, as a matter of fact. So I was involved with a project called Poapathon, and we did a weekly streaming, and they were having a POAP created. And I was like, oh, what is this? What are these cute little nouns, these cute little sideway facing nouns with their eyes moving back and forth? They were adorable. And I met Side Noun, the founder of that project, and he said he had gotten a grant from the Small Grants Committee for 0.25 ETH to help him launch the project. And I went, oh, that's really interesting. And then as I started digging more into nouns and the CC0 aspect, that became important to me because I was teaching a class and am teaching a class on blockchain. And at that time, that was my first semester teaching it. It's a class I created. Hold on. Yeah, I got to back up a second.
You're teaching. What are you doing?
I got to back up a second. So I am a professor. I'm an actual professor. It's not just a thing. I'm an actual professor at Florida Gulf Coast University, and I teach in the School of Entrepreneurship. And I teach. I have a JD and an MBA, so I'm not a PhD. So I tend to teach things that are a little more practical. And I was teaching legal strategies for startups. My students got, it just more and more as time went on. Students got really interested in crypto. It seemed to always kind of intersperse with my law class in different ways. We'd end up talking about it. And I'm like, we really need a class on this. Like we really should have its own thing, and geared more towards entrepreneurs, not necessarily software engineering, which, by the way, our software engineering still does not have anything related to crypto.
Wow.
So they come take my class, which is a whole other thing. So I launched this, I create this class, I launch it in January 2022. And part of it, in the back of my mind, I kept thinking we really should create an NFT project. So of course, my first thought is we'll use our mascot, we'll use FGCU, and we couldn't do it. Like I was not going to be able to get that through because of copyright and trademark issues. And I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? And then I find Side Noun, he mentions this grant, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And another thing happened at that same time. I launched this class. It was supposed to be one section, entrepreneurship students. And 3 days before the semester started, I got a call that there was somebody in the software engineering department was taking leave for the semester. And did I want to take over their class and turn it into a blockchain class? And I went, hold on. You want me, who does not code, to teach a bunch of software engineering students? So, okay. And I went, all right, let's do it. Let's do it. Because now I had a technical piece. Now you got to jump back to January 2022. There's no Manifold. There's no Zora. There's no tools, no code tools, very few. There were a couple. And one of them was Factoria. That was what Side Noun was using. And that was the other connection there. So he really helped kind of jumpstart my journey. So that was, that was how it all started. And then by March of 2022, I had put in a proposal to Small Grants. And that was a little bit, I had to figure out where to go, how to do that. So if I hadn't had Side Noun to kind of point me in the right direction, I don't know if I would have figured it out, but I did. And they gave me a grant. So they gave me a grant of 0.97. That's what I asked for because we were founded in 1997. So I was like, I'll come in right under 1 ETH. And that is what the funds that I used to launch the project. So we created Florida Nouns. So it's only flamingos, hence the flamingo back there. It's like flamingos and, sharks and fish and anything that's Florida-ish island. So the heads from the Nouns collection that fit the environment, and the students help create those. So they're a little janky. And then it kind of went from there. It was sort of my main entry point into the Nouns ecosystem, because from there, that April, I became the first woman on Nounsel. Nounsel is a council of Nounish builders that was launched just, March 2022. By April 2022, I was on Nounsel. And then I just got more and more involved in the ecosystem. So now I'm everywhere. I'm in Little Nouns. I do hold a NARS DAO, which is another Nounish DAO, food nouns. I started a DAO called Just the Flamingo. And I started that DAO when we launched Nouns Builder. So Nouns Builder is a tool that was funded by Nouns, built by Zora, and it helps you create your own Nounish style DAO. So anyone can do it. It's free to use. We're about to launch an L2 version on Zora Chain, Optimism, and Base. where you'll be able to choose what chain to use, and it'll help with gas and things like that. So I launched one of the first DAOs on that platform so I could learn how it worked and be able to help other people do it. So Just the Flamingo is not really active as a DAO. It's more like an experiment. When we need to try things out, we go in there and play around. But it's, yeah, so that is and now I'm the community resident because there wasn't a Discord to help with Nouns Builder. I created one, and then it rolled from there. And now I manage that community. So
and I remember
my artist journey.
Yeah, it's so amazing, and I love hearing it because there's so much in there that we got to dig into.
There's so much.
One thing that's really important that we have to explain. We're going to go to Garth here real quick to get Garth your background, and I want to hear y'all's story of how you connected, because it really speaks to the ethos and just the nature of Web3. But we're going to have to dig into CC0, what that means, the philosophy behind it, and quite possibly what that unlocks. And it's so important from a brand perspective, like for so many, we all know how protective brands are of their IP and their brand. And this is
like flip it on the head.
Yeah. So we're going to get into CC0. But Garth, welcome. So glad that you could join, longtime Jump community member, active in so many parts of Web3 and emerging tech. So Garth, tell us a little bit about yourself and how your kind of journey into Nouns and how you and Prof. Werder became, best friends.
Yeah, for sure. Based on that intro there from Prof. Werder, it's gonna be hard for me to really kind of follow that up. I feel like we're only just scratching the surface of chapter 1 in like a 52 chapter book, right? It's like there's so much here. So I came across Nouns early on when I was doing research and trying to understand the use of DAOs in the NFT communities, right? Like DAOs have been structured in the DeFi space for quite some time, but I hadn't really seen much of it being formed effectively outside of just calling it a DAO, but actually having a DAO configured. And that's when I first came across Nouns being a fork of Compound, and started kind of digging into the technical components of it to really understand how this works. And then once I saw the technical back end, I was like, holy cow, this is amazing. Then I saw the price of Nouns and was like, holy cow, that's amazing. Definitely out of my price range. But as time went on, I'd spent some time at Vayner3, working as senior community strategist there. And, we as a team came up with this great idea to find out how to bring the Nouns closer to one of these bigger brands, right? Because we hadn't seen that in the space yet. And that's when the team came up with a wonderful strategy to bring Nouns and Bud Light together for a Super Bowl event, which a lot of people won't ever know this, but that was the first, NFT experience in the Super Bowl. I think a lot of people will know of some later on.
We know.
Yeah, but
we tell everybody, don't you worry.
Yeah, I constantly remind people of that, and that to me was like the first real exposure that I had to the greater community and some of the Nouns builders, and communicating with them and hearing what they were building and hearing what they were trying to do, and it just kind of sucked me in. I just got addicted to what was going on there, and then later through the Bud Light program, there were some Bud Light Noggles released, which were really cool. And then there was some voting by proxy inside of the Discord that allowed the Bud Light holders to vote along with propose and vote on some of the things that were happening in the Nouns DAO community. And there was actually quite a bit of participation there. So it was really cool to take people that had zero knowledge or exposure to anything and then kind of pipe them through a bigger brand to get them access to the complete polar opposite of what branding is on the Web3 side of things. So this really weird mashup of things happened. And I feel like sometimes it was way ahead of its time. And, we needed more people to understand what's going on here. And I think in years to come, this is going to be something that we all look back on and just say, again, holy cow, look at what we did and look at what was built here.
Yeah. The Nouns Bud Light sort of thing that went on, it was so bleeding edge and so ahead of its time that it completely flew under the radar of anybody, unless you're deep into Web3. It just mainstream media, mainstream publications, just general. And that was, what was that, earlier this year? Or
that
year
was,
before?
That was 2021.
Yeah.
January.
So groundbreaking. And
really
the fact that we haven't seen participation like that, like that is actually more the future than a lot of what we're seeing brands do now. For sure. I 100% believe that. What was the story you were talking about? How Bud Light was like, they had a noun to vote, right?
Yeah.
How did they
still do?
And they still have the noun. How did they get the noun?
I vote on every proposal via that noun. Every single one almost I have voted on since, because I had a Bud Light Next right from the start. I had one and now I have 20.
So the Bud Light Next holders are voting on what that Bud Light noun should vote on whenever there's a proposal in the system, which we're going to get to one of those proposals that you pass, a major Web3 brand collab between Nouns and Pudgy Penguins that you led. We're going to table that. Garth, how did Bud Light get the noun?
So I don't know how much I can share on that. That might be a Vayner 3 question. Since I'm not there anymore, I won't speak to that. So I think that would be a better conversation to talk to the nouns.
I'll speak to it. Since
I can tell you the general piece of this is that everything that happens in nouns goes through a proposal. So there was a proposal that was put up. It was, I'm sure there was some discussion in the background before the proposal goes up, but it went up and it was voted on. And the deal was, here, we're going to give you this noun. It's a beer head. We call him Brewski. That's his name. And in exchange, they were going to feature Nouns glasses in the Super Bowl commercial. And then there was also even a POAP that was done after the fact by Gremplin, who is one of the Nounders, one of the founders of Nouns, which I love. It's one of my favorite POAPs because it's just has amazing art. So it was really cool. And it all happened through a proposal.
So there's
three different versions of that POAP too. So there's I'm jealous because I only have one, and I know people that have 3, and I'm like, how did you get that? 1. And 2, they're really awesome animated POAPs too, which you didn't see a lot of then either. So it was really, really cool to see that kind of be a trendsetter as well.
Okay, so if you're watching this, we're recording this, it's going to be released in the future. So if you're watching this now in the future, if you're on YouTube, go to our website, click in the comments. You'll see the link to this proposal that we're talking about, because we're going to cover this. We're going to provide more information so that you can explore, because that's so amazing that that's out there. It's on chain, the history of it, and there's a proposal. So that will be in the research piece that's accompanying this podcast. One other thing. So you mentioned that Nouns gave, there's this proposal and they gave Bud Light the noun. That noun came from the Nouns treasury, which is something we need to just sort of make clear. Every day there's a noun auction, but it's every 10th noun goes into the Nouns treasury. Is that correct? And then they're kind of free to do whatever they want with those nouns.
Not exactly. It goes to the Nounders. It goes to the Nounders, who are the founders of Nouns. So it doesn't go into the treasury, because if it went into the treasury, it would be owned by the DAO.
Got it.
If anything, there are some nouns that are in the treasury. It's complicated, but they are owned by the DAO, not the Nounders. But the Nounder reward, they don't take any ETH. They didn't get anything from any of these, any mints. What they get as a reward is the nouns, every 10th noun. So that's what goes to them, and they determine what to do with those. So,
wow.
Yeah.
The fact that people come together, put all this work in, build something, and their compensation is an NFT is kind of mind-blowing, but it's also the future.
But those particular NFTs have been sold for quite a bit.
Yeah.
So they did fine.
Yeah, no, they're doing great. It's not a bad outcome, but it's wild to think that we're going to do all this, and this is how we're going to compensate ourselves, and it's going to work out all great. And it clearly has, and it's going to be incredible. Okay, how did y'all meet? Garth Lee, tell us that story, and then from there we're going to go. Well, Prof, I'll give you the option. I'm going to give you two options in which direction we're going to go. So Garth, how did y'all meet?
Yeah, and I'll have to sadly scoot right after that. Sorry to be
all good.
But it was a fine Sunday afternoon in the summer, I believe. No, I'm just kidding. I don't remember what day it was, but I had just happened to hop on Spaces one day, and I saw POAP in the name, and I was like, I'll jump in here, see what's going on. It was Prof Werder, and gosh, I can't remember exactly who. I think Robot Fish Girl was in there, and maybe like 3 or 4 other people. And they were just having the time of their lives talking about POAP and how they use POAP. And, POAP was something that I used very frequently since the dawn of time, and have issued hundreds of them, if not thousands, I think, by now. And it's always been a big interest to me, to use that to document things, bookmark things, if you will. And I was just listening to them talk about how they were using it, and then also found out that there was this Nouns tie-in, and thought I should just butt into the conversation and start talking. And we just became fast friends at that time. We talked about our shared love of the Nouns, shared love of POAP. And then she started explaining to me how she was using POAP with her students and teaching things about the blockchain and NFTs. And I just knew at that moment that I had to get close to this person. She's doing what I wish I could do in terms of educating the masses on this incredible ecosystem that we have. And so she said, hey, there's this whole thing happening over here with the Noun Square and Noun O'Clock and all of these things that, even though I was incredibly exposed to the Noun, there's so many facets and so many little tunnels that you can go down that I had no idea any of this really existed. I was blind to it all. And so she was my gateway to the rest of the ecosystem. That is where I met more of the Nouns folk, and started really seeing the value in what this community has created in terms of other creators creating and continue to create. And it was just this inception of different creators and different sub-DAOs and different people. And I'm talking to these guys at the Bonies over here, and I'm meeting Greta Grimplin over here, and I'm buying these other little weird nouns that have, other little things going on over there. And it just was dizzying to me, but also incredibly fun, and just kind of at a time too where I felt like NFTs were losing some of the allure, but this kind of sparked an interest again and made me really excited and happy to be a part of something again.
And all these sub communities and all these side pockets, that's all possible because of CC0.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
So Prof.
Exactly.
Werder, I actually lied. I said I was going to give you the choice.
Yeah, you're just going to go to CC0, right?
I remember you said that we're going to come back to that, so we need to do that. Garth, thank you for that. Hang around as long as you can.
It sounds like I got to jump right into another call.
Okay, well, let's give you a big salute. Thank you for joining, and thank you for organizing this. It wouldn't have happened without you.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Garth. All right, here we go. Okay, so
exactly, CC0 made all that possible.
Away.
It makes the Bonies possible. The Bonies is a project that combines Cryptodes, which is also a CC0 project by Gremplin, who is a founder of Nouns, and all these different takeoffs on the flora nouns that I created, food nouns, all these different things. Because you can use this art in any way, you can create your own derivative of it. And nobody's going to, throw a DMCA at you because you can just go ahead and use it. So what I've seen and what excites me is the level of creativity, and the artists' interpretations have just taken it, just infinitely to all different levels. And we see it within these projects, but we also see it in things like the animated shorts. So not that long ago, we had a film festival, with animated shorts, and they were next level. I'm talking people formerly worked at Pixar and Disney and all this, just crazy level of talent putting these animated shorts together. And we funded that, and they're amazing. So we have a Nouns movie that's coming out. There's, we have a gaming pod, all these different things that are happening. And it's all possible because we say, go ahead and build whatever you want. It doesn't mean that Nouns is going to fund it, but you can use it and you can play off the brand. So, the idea is that as this brand grows, that value of using these is going to be, more useful to a lot of different types of brands who can build their own thing and still take advantage of the larger marketing effort that's happening organically.
Yep.
So that's the excitement to me. And to get, step back just a smidge, my background from a legal perspective is copyright and trademark. So I came from that world of like must protect at all costs. So seeing this and thinking it through and going, ooh, that's an interesting approach. I want to be a part of that and see what happens. And it's just so interesting. And I say this a lot. It's like IP lawyers had nothing to do for like 100-something years because it was just like, that's what it is. And now it's like everywhere is, different between AI and blockchain and all these different ways of approaching copyright. Like it's fun again. There's just a lot to dive into, and it gets you, excited, all over again about all these different things. And it's fun. And from a brander's perspective, like this is like a dream.
Right.
Take this thing and run with it and see what you can do with it. How can you make it your own? How can you capture some value from the overall branding efforts? And that's, to me, super exciting because it's never been done before. We don't know if it's going to work, but I think it is. And it already kind of is.
It's working. And
it's working.
We'll see. We'll talk. I want to ask you in a minute about like the risks and the downside.
Sure.
But because of that CC0, what you see with Jump and our Icon series, Nike was our first one. Nouns is our second one.
By the way, we refer to this as the Nike swoosh of Web3. So there you go.
Hey, here you go. This is like...
I just gave you a beautiful segue from Icon 1 to Icon 2. You're welcome. You're so welcome.
I don't know how it worked out, but it did. But because of that CC0, we are taking the Noggles. We are using them permissionlessly. We're creating, in a lot of ways, what we're doing here is our own form of education in like a performance arts kind of way, where it's research, it's content, it's NFT, it's using the fundamentals of these theories and what people have laid to also tell that story in a multi-dimensional way. But like, what are the risks? What could go wrong? Like those Noggles could be used in some, we can all imagine.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're just waiting for Nounly fans. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time, like the OnlyFans of Nouns is going to happen. Like things like that are going to happen. And it is a risk. So you don't control the brand. It can be used in any way. It's just a matter of time before it starts being used, in a way that maybe we didn't like. Right. But, that's where you kind of get into, well, was it funded by us?
Exactly.
That's going to be the different thing. So if you think about it, anyone can do that anyways, right? With any kind of brand, because there's always these fair use, types of artistic expression and things like that you can kind of work around. So it is a risk. It's a bigger risk for CCO than a traditional brand, but it's, I think, a risk worth taking to see if the positive side, which I think is where we are still, can overpower anything on the negative side. So we'll see though, but I mean, it's definitely a huge risk. So for a traditional brand to take that approach, I think you have to tread lightly and make sure that it's a direction you want to go in. So it's different for Nouns because it's not like the Nounders are like, we're going to start this project and we want to do this, and we want to have control. And no, they were like, we're going to do this. And then we're going to let you guys do it. Yep. You go and do it. So they're, basically turning over that, branding strategy to the world and letting them run with it. It's, it's definitely a whole different approach, and it makes a lot of traditional marketers very uncomfortable. So I'm sure there's some folks watching this in your crew that are like, I would never do that. Yeah. And then there's others who are going to be like, ooh, okay, let's see what we can do with this. Let's have some fun. So yeah, it's a very different thing. For sure.
I would love to see more brands get involved with CC0 projects so that they don't have to necessarily take on that risk, but they can come in as a participant and add so much value. And it's just right there if you just know how to lean in and build those relationships and operate in the space and see what's there. And then the next layer, I want to throw these ideas out there because I know the people that are watching. And like, I hope this becomes inspiration. Don't take your current brand and see that's never going to work. We all know that big enterprises. But if it's at all possible to do a spin out, right, and create something new that you put into the public domain, I would love to see what that looks like. And I feel like there's a brand. And there's one word that's brave enough to do it. I don't know who that brand is, but I think there's a brand brave enough to create some sort of new IP and to put that into the public domain and it to be a force, a really powerful idea that does a lot of good. And I'd love to see that happen. So there it is.
I think it's going to happen. It's going to be, you're going to see it happen more and more. I think the more that there are some great artistic assets that are CC0, the more attractive that play is going to become. And, think about Opepen. We watched it over this past week. Opepen is CC0. The reason you see the insane amount of derivatives and you see everyone doing their version and their take on it is because they can.
Yep.
Right. Because Jack's go, by the way, Jack's an owner. So this is that's the other thing that's really interesting about Nouns DAO is who is there. Yep. There are some majorly big brains on every possible front, from technical marketing, every music, everything you can think of. There are some big brains in there. And that gets, that to me is also something that's very interesting and just being around that builder energy. So, you're 100% right. You're going to see, and we already are seeing some Web3 brands take that approach and use it either permissionlessly or come to us and say, hey, we have an idea. Let's talk.
That's us.
We've seen it both ways.
Let's jump. We're using it permissionlessly. This is our first step into CC0 and collaboration and all of that. And something we've talked about for a long time as a community. There's a lot we want to put in as a foundation first, just because of our role and how we play in the world. But it's highly likely we'll launch some sort of CC0 IP. I have no idea what that is. But if you're part of the Jump community and you're listening to this, that's on the horizon. We just have to figure out how to do this. And this is part of our learning journey. So let's go on to a couple of things. This is your choose your own adventure. We're going to talk about, so you just passed one of the most epic proposals that is so amazing. Got funded by the main treasury. So we've seen you go from, participating in a derivative project to launching a small grant to now getting 10 ETH to fund this new thing. I'm not going to spoil. I'm going to let you describe it.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, I don't know.
And to be fair, I didn't get 10 ETH.
No. Yes. But for the project.
But I helped somebody get it for the project. So and just to step back a little bit, I do own 2 Nouns now with 20 other people because
love that.
We consider us the poors of Nouns. So we can't afford our own Nouns on our own. So we, gathered together and we're all a bunch of builders within the community. So it's Toady Hawk and Super Tight Woody and Ben Bodie and Mr. Boney, all the Gammy from Nouns DAO, Uptoshi. It's it's a pretty power crew of builders within the space. And we all own Noun 472, which we call Boxy. He's the first box Noun. And 506, which is Math Can, because he has a pie on his shirt. So we always give these little nicknames to some of these famous Nouns. And so that, kind of got me even deeper into the ecosystem. And I started to really think about, we actually put a prop on chain called Propbox. And the goal was to help other builders put proposals up. our proposal did not pass, but it was a great learning experience. And it helped line me up to be able to help other people get their proposals on chain and do it. And that's what we did with Luca Netz of Pudgy Penguins. And I had met him back in March. So networking, very important, people, which I know this group knows. So I just figured I'd shout that out. So we went to the Overpriced JPEGs Happy Hour in March in Miami with Carly Riley, and it was their first one that they were doing a live podcast, and with Julian Holquin from Doodles, the CEO of Doodles, and Luca Netz happened to be there as well. Connected with him. He was like, I really want to do something with Nouns. And we just, kind of went back and forth. He ended up at the licensing show in Vegas and met up with Clem from Big Shot Toy Works, who Clem had given him some gold version of this, which, by the way, Clem, I'm waiting for my gold version. So he gave him a pair of gold noggles, and that kind of sparked an additional inspiration for Luca. He came, said, hey, I'm ready. I got the perfect idea. Let's go. And we put this prop together, and I wrote a big piece about like all the intricacies of the governance. If anyone's interested, go take a look at that.
We'll link to it.
Because it's like very detailed. But the bottom line was just, giving him a way to understand the process, help him write the proposal, found him two nouns to be delegated to him. Shout out Shan. And then we got the proposal on chain, and then went through sort of the campaign process and going through and talking to the voters and saying, this is what we want to do. So I was super excited about this, because what this is what Luca is doing in my mind is huge. Like, he is a marketer extraordinaire. He's got skills, he's got hustle, and like, if you're not watching him, you need to be watching him, and you need to check out Building in Public on YouTube, because watching their journey and what they're doing and the fact that they're sharing that, I think, is huge. So you see the ups and downs, you see what they're doing, you see the challenges, and it's really interesting. So I had been, sort of following what they were doing with this project. And I'm like, this is absolutely someone we need to be connected with, because this guy's a rock star. He's a rock star in the making. Like, he is, in my mind, this project and what he's doing they're just on a huge trajectory. So let's get on the rocket, was my thinking. And he was really interested in partnering with Nouns from a very, to me, authentic Web3 desire to be connected with what he sees as something that is really embodying this Web3 ethos of decentralization and, kind of doing it right. So in that community aspect too, we have a huge community. We have a small number of holders. We have a huge community, because you've got all these sub DAOs. You do not need a noun to be part of the community. You do not need to have anything nounish to be part of the community. You can just come on in, throw some noggles on, and we're going to welcome you. And come, participate in whatever it is we're doing. We have content. We have all kinds of stuff. There's all different ways to get involved. So like, that aspect of community is also very in line with what Pudgy Penguins is doing. So it just was like such a natural fit. And for us, I think one of the challenges we have is that we don't have a marketing department. Like, it's not a thing we do. It's not something they even want to fund. Like, anytime we've tried that, we've hit roadblocks on that. So you have to find these sort of authentic ways. And to me, like, partnerships like this is a great way to do it, because he's already got that going. He's got millions of views on Instagram. He's got those, followers he's got all that working already that he can tap into, and we can just slide in with those noggles on a penguin, but also making sure that, what he's bringing is very high quality. It's, it's a limited edition collectible. It's, something that sort of matches with what, Nouns wants to fund and be associated with. So it has to be the right prop at the right time. This, I don't think, was necessarily the right time, but we got it through anyway. And I think it's, it said a lot to what Luca has done and sort of laid the groundwork, that he was able to come in and, people were like excited. There was so much excitement from the second it dropped. And I was really careful about when we chose to drop it, how we were going to, sort of introduce it, on the Little Nouns show spaces, because Little Nouns vote first, as Nounsel does, like, knowing sort of that process. And, I was able to set a strategy and be like, okay, here's who you need to talk to first, because they vote early, and kind of getting him in the right place, and just letting him cook from there. Just saying, here, go here, and then letting him unleash his, like his Lucanus, and being able to see that excitement happen. And I expected excitement from the Noun side. I didn't expect as much excitement as I got from the Pudgy Penguin side. They were over the moon. And I was like, this is really cool that they are so excited about this. And what was even cooler was seeing people with neither, with no dog in the fight, like not in Nouns, not in Pudgy, also being excited about it and saying, hey, we want to talk about this. This looks really interesting. This is exciting. And I'm like, wow, this was bigger than I realized. Like this was something that was much bigger than I even could have anticipated.
This is one of the most significant brand collabs that nobody's paying enough attention to. It's absolutely huge. And it goes back, it's this story. The Bud Light Nouns thing is something that is so unbelievable, that's so cutting edge. This is the same as well. So when we talk about this Pudgy Penguins, Luca's he acquired that NFT project. It was in the tank. Everybody thought it was dead. He swooped in,
totally dead.
Bought the IP, brought the whole thing back to life. And then he's got this unbelievable, like you said, marketing and licensing and collectible strategy. They sold out 500,000 Pudgy Penguins on Amazon, like that.
Yep.
Then they did this like super high-end toy drop. I think there's a shark and a banana.
That's what we're doing with the Nouns one. It's the same kind of thing on Network, where they're going to do this live stream. They do the drop. It's all connected with the Network app. And they sold out. They have the fastest sellout time on that whole platform right now.
For those that don't know what Network is, it's basically a collectibles platform. You've got to be, I'm not super familiar with it, but
I'm new to it as well, but it's very similar to, like, if you're familiar with like different platforms like StockX and different platforms where they're doing collectible drops, where you have to be on at that moment when it drops because it's going to go fast. And then a lot of times they're being resold on eBay. So like that shark one that the Pudgies dropped, a penguin in a shark suit, and it's adorable. They ended up selling that out in, I believe it was 3 seconds. And then, there were 3, 4, 5x on eBay, like right afterwards. It's crazy. Huge platform for storytelling and commerce. Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting. And I think that, this is what Luca does really well. He's very tapped into what people are looking for, what they want. And I love that. I think that's super important. And this has been really interesting to me to get to know what he's doing on that side. And as soon as I saw what he was doing, because some of the other thing is there's so many, and you guys understand this better than anyone. It's not just about the thing. It's about the unboxing of the thing. It's about the millions, the hundreds and hundreds of videos that are going to come from the unboxing of the thing.
Right.
It's going to be, the live event that you get to share. It's going to be about everything that leads up to it. It's going to be everything that comes after it. The prop alone got us more attention than like we've had in a long time, so it's amazing to see, like, there's a whole bunch of pieces to this puzzle, and it's really, really cool.
Oh, I can just see if the people out there is like, how do we measure the media value of this, right? Like there's that new sort of calculation.
I need that, by the way. That would be fabulous. I need those, like, we don't know how to, we are bad at capturing that. Like, it's because it's so out there, like you've got YouTube, you've got all these different platforms where you have all these different mentions. And especially with something like this, we know it's going to get so much traction in so many different places. Like, that's going to be something like I'm going to need at some point, is all that data. Yeah, for sure.
I definitely know a few people.
I thought you might.
But I know there's a lot of people watching this that are going to know a few people, or they can do it themselves.
Maybe they are. Yeah, they are.
It's a next level, right? As we see brands start to participate in this space, not legacy brands, but the new emerging brands. I'm sorry if you're at a legacy brand right now. This space is moving so fast that try to keep up. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's possible, but the rate at which these ideas and these brands are proliferating are on a scale that we have absolutely never seen. I hope this podcast is way ahead of its time in terms of really champion what that means. But yeah, measuring the actual impact of this and starting to understand the value that's being created, that's going to help sort of drive more participation and hopefully creates more fun in the world.
Hopefully now, number go up. We always want that too.
Yeah, awesome. So this like collectible drop, the 10 ETH that was actually passed, the request to have this funded, because we talked about CC0. Parking Penguins could have done this without it. They could have just done the drop, put it on there. But there's two things. One thing is while the permissionless nature is great, right? It's good to have that. And that's what we're doing. We're playing with the permissionless nature. There's a different kind of benefit to get the approval, right? And I don't know, maybe we'll have an idea from our community one day where we want to seek that and we want to do that. So it's not a right or wrong. There's two different strategies, but there's two things here. The 10 ETH helped fund basically a few of these high-end collectibles will have gold noggles. So there's some funding for that. And then two, just the approval says something. Right. And
so it's really, for sure. That was like the bigger driver here was, we, and Luke and I talked back and forth about this, like, do we put it in for 0? And I'm like, you know what? We need a little skin in the game in some way, one way or another, because, and also weirdly, Nouns really hates it when you put an on-chain prop up that doesn't need to be on-chain. So there needs to be some kind of transaction in some way. So so it either has to be, an ETH transfer or, another way to go would be a dropposal, I'll talk to you about that later. So a dropposal would be a proposal that actually creates a drop of an edition or a drop of a collection or something like that, but it comes officially through the proposal process and it only gets executed if the prop passes. So we talked about those different options, and this was the best option because this allowed for him to fund sort of that extra special piece of this, which he's considering like a golden ticket, like making it almost like a rarity within a physical item. But also there's a RFID that's built into this collectible. So there's also an NFT built into this collectible. So there's multiple like sort of facets to this. And it also has like this, really high-end box and all the things, like it's all this very luxury end thing. So there's going to be, I believe 998 is the total. So 499 of penguins with red noggles, 499 of penguins with blue noggles. And this is going to be one of the larger drops that they've done. But he has zero doubt that it's going to sell out and probably in record time. So I was like, okay. And watching the other drops go and just watching the attention around the toys that, the toy launch that they did, I 100% believe that is the case, that they will drop, it'll sell out like that. Yeah.
Is there a date? Is there a date for
I think tentatively they're shooting for December. They needed about 4 months for production. So he's been doing drops on the 8th of each month, I believe. So I think that's December 8th, maybe, but I can't guarantee that. I don't think we'll know that until we get much closer. But I think it's going to be really exciting. And also to see kind of the ramp up, I think is going to be really exciting because he is, planning to incorporate community input into this whole thing, which is, very different in a Web3 sense. You don't see that happen a lot in a traditional corporation where, the CEO is like, what do you think? The CEO doesn't care what you think. They don't care at all. They want to know what the shareholders think. In this case, the community, doesn't own it, but they, have a say. And that I think is really important and really ties into that Web3 ethos again. So it's exciting. And I can't wait to see, this to me is step one. And he's like, I'm going to come in, I'm going to crush this. It's going to be incredible. And then we're gonna run it back and do something even bigger. And I'm like, let's go,
And just, I can't
yeah.
wait for, even if it's not a deep analysis on the media value, just like the general summary, being able to be shared back to the Nouns community, because we know that a lot of the people who own these 60,000, 100,000, 200,000 nouns from these daily auctions, I would be shocked how many of them come from a deep brand background, who understand brand trackers and the massive value and insight that you can get from collecting data over long periods of time. Would be so fascinating.
Definitely something we're lacking at the moment. And again, decentralization is a bug and a feature, right? Yeah. Sometimes it's great and sometimes it's a challenge because you can't say, hey, marketing department, go do this. There is no marketing department. There is no biz development person. It's all like whoever comes to the table with a proposal, that's who owns whatever piece of this it is. Right. So yeah, that's definitely something that we're going to need more and more as time goes on, to be able to say, okay, what's the impact of Nouns movie on, Big Shot Toy Works? And what's the impact of the animated films over here on the middle school book? Or, we have so many, there's no verticals here. It's like
that can be
so it's crazy.
I think I might submit a proposal for that. Interesting. Okay.
We'll talk.
We want to get to a couple more things. Nouns Builder.
Yeah.
This is another permissionless. If the Noggles are CC0 and that's our creative permissionless IP, correct me if I'm wrong, but Nouns Builder is sort of like the technical version of that, where it's permissionless, it's tech, it's infrastructure. It's basically both are public goods and can be used, hopefully, as much as possible for only good things out in the world. But let's break down Nouns Builder. Help us understand that, its history, where it is today, where you see it going. And maybe it's really advice you have for people.
I love the way you kind of put that. Like the art is CC0 and the code is open source. Like that's really what Nouns is. Right? It's everything is like, we built this. Here you go. Now go build your own thing. Take this as a base and then build on it. So with Nouns Builder, so it's important to know, like I think Garth mentioned, compound. So Nouns itself is a fork of something that Zora builds using Compound's original auction. So there was Compound, then Zora improved it, and then Nouns forked it and created the Nouns auction house. Okay. And then that was then forked or built upon by Zora again. So it's like this weird loop to create Nouns Builder. So Nouns Builder has everything you need to create your own Nounish style DAO. And what a Nounish DAO is one that has an auction mechanic, and you can change the cadence of that. It doesn't have to be one a day, but an auction mechanic that then once the auction is settled, those funds go into a treasury and can only be unlocked via a proposal. So that's the essential underlying piece of this. And it has 5 different smart contracts that are managing it for all different pieces. Like there's a governance contract, an NFT contract, metadata, and a couple others that are escaping me at the moment. But there's all these different contracts in the background. And then as Nouns Builder is developing and growing and adding features, any DAO that's built on it is getting those features built in as well. So it's continuously improving, but also kind of sharing that public good as we go on. So it's essentially was built to be a public good, builder of DAOs and to support DAOs that are, experimenting with this type of organization. And it's really interesting. We've got some really cool DAOs that have been launched. Like Purple DAO is one of my favorites. Okay. And it is a DAO that supports development of Farcaster. Farcaster is a decentralized social platform. And so they're helping to support building on Farcaster. And then you have something like The Park, which is a music DAO. And they have an amazing website, thepark.wtf, where you can actually watch them on Fridays, or it might not be every Friday, but it might be every other Friday, when they have Fridays at the park. And they're in a music studio and they have a bunch of musicians and they're streaming their jam session. And then they take that and cut it into a mint, and then you can mint it. It's like amazing. So we have all these different DAOs that are popping up that are doing really cool stuff. And it's, it's exciting to be able to experiment and see what works and what doesn't, so that we can just keep getting better. And so it's really fun.
And so these DAOs that are popping up, they're not necessarily sub DAOs or connected to Nouns. They
may not be Nounish at all. Purple has nothing to do with Nouns. There's no Nouns art on it. The park does incorporate some Noggles, but in terms of other than that, they didn't even have to. And there's a lot of DAOs that they have zero connection to Nouns itself, except for the underlying tech. You can just do whatever you want. The art is completely up to you, and your purpose is up to you. So yeah, it has nothing to do with Nouns. So it's just the underlying support. And what's really interesting, and that people may or may not know about Nouns, is we've developed a lot of different tech that can be used by anyone. So usually for free. So Prop House is a great example. Like if Jump was like, I think we want to run a Prop House and see if we can get a new logo or a whatever, you could do it. You can just click on a button, launch your own Prop House. You're the ones who provide the funds. We provide the platform, and it makes it easy for people to, deploy capital. So all these little things that we develop usually have a public goods component to them, and it's really fun. And Nouns AI is another one. What they're doing is like next level. So there's a whole bunch of really cool stuff happening.
What's Nouns AI?
Oh, you don't know about Nouns AI?
No.
Oh, Nouns AI .wtf. Usually if you see a .wtf, it's probably Nounish.
Yeah.
So Nouns AI has a bunch of different facets, but originally it was started to create the Noun 355 to try and create this way that we could have an AI Nouner who would evaluate proposals based on certain training, AI training to it, and evaluate proposals and vote. So that's how it started. But what it's become is there's a whole platform that's a playground that you can mess around with images, video. They just added music. So for all of you right here, you should really check it out, because if you're trying to create something, there's a lot of cool stuff there. Again, free. And then there's also Rocco, who is how to describe him. He's an assistant. He helps out in Discord and things like that, where he'll go through, if you have Rocco inserted into your Discord, it's not really publicly available, it's still in beta. He'll go through and give you a weekly summary of all the chat in this, this particular area. He's being trained to answer questions in Discord, and then eventually on Twitter and different places, where if you're like, what's Nouns, he can answer you and tell you exactly what that answer is. So we've been using him in Builder DAO, and he's learning about Builder DAO. So if I'm the community manager there, I'm obviously not there 24/7. This space is 24/7. Like, we all know that. Like, we got to sleep sometime. I mean, I don't sleep much anymore, clearly, but you got to sleep sometime. So you need those ways to be able to communicate with the other side of the world. And this can, be a helper. So there's all these things that we are constantly developing within Nouns that then can be applied to other people that can use it and apply it to their own DAOs or their own organizations. It doesn't even have to be a DAO. So it's pretty cool.
Just you created the Nouns community created all the problems for itself to go solve, but in doing so is also helping others come in and explore the space and build. So, wow, this is so cool. Okay, I've got at least one more question for you. I do want to ask you if there's anything after this, if there's anything we didn't cover that you'd like to draw attention to. As I'm talking through, I'm like, okay, I lied again. I have two things.
It's fine. I'm all yours. I am in no rush. So you got me for a while, so it's all good.
Awesome. So as a part of these icon series, we didn't do this with Nike because it was just it was our MVP version. But for this one, we want to look at on-chain data, especially with the Nouns ecosystem, because it's just so interesting and there's so much there to unpack. So if you could request any on-chain data that you'd like to see us do, now if you're watching this, hopefully we have fulfilled those requests. We'll see.
Be interesting. All right.
Yeah, if there's any on-chain data requests that you have that you'd like us to include, what would
there was one thing that popped out at me immediately when you say that is just recently with the Pudgy Penguin prop, what I was like, I wish I could right now just pull a list of every Nouner who owns a Pudgy Penguin. Like, it would have made my life easier, right? They eventually found us anyway because we there was a lot of attention. But that, was something I would love. I'd love to be able to go, okay, this collection and Nouns, what's the overlap? Because for me, and I'm going to tell you, I need that for Doodles. And if you could get that to me soon, that'd be great.
Oh, okay.
Alpha. Yeah. So yeah, things like, that to me is super useful. From my perspective, where I might be looking for those connection points to see what makes sense for Nouns, to be able to pull, what other projects, or even just in general, like what do they, be able to kind of determine some interests from in that community. I think that could be huge. And I can see that being, so applicable to so many different projects, but for us, for sure.
100%. We're going to be able to provide that.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Amazing.
I can't wait to see what the data looks like.
I'd love to see that.
So cool. Yeah. Okay. If there's any other data that you think of or on chain.
The other thing is figuring out our brand reach. If you can determine what's our brand reach right now, what does that look like across, because the level of, again, decentralization, you've got all these different people doing all these different things all over the place. It's not like you can't just go to, here's our socials. You're not going to get anything, because if you just look at Nouns DAO, we don't do anything. You know what I mean? That Twitter doesn't do much. I don't think we do anything on Instagram. There's nothing. It's the people doing proposals. It's the Noun Square. It's Nounish. It's all these sub DAOs. It's NARS. It's all those things that are proliferating this meme, but we don't have a really good way to capture all that. I need to know where the noggles are all over the world, because we're not just here. We've got a huge presence in Australia. We've got a huge presence in Brazil. We're gaining a lot of big presence in Japan. So, and then spread out throughout Europe. So there's, in Canada is of course, Canada, US, but Central America, we're starting to see a lot of pop. So there's, how do we capture what this brand value really is? And how do we know if it's, growing? Is what we're doing working? Even better would be amazing. And this would be, I don't even know how you do this, is how can we tell what efforts within the proposals are working? What kind of ROI are we getting from certain things? And I don't know how to capture that at this moment. So that would be huge.
What does ROI even mean in this case?
I don't even know. I don't even know. But honestly, for me, I think it means, eyes, views, attention, more than anything. It's really hard to tie it back to noun purchase. It's not a direct line. But to me, what I want to see is what kind of proliferation is the term we use, right? Mm-hmm. What kind of proliferation ROI did we get from X activity or prop or whatever? But even in general, just getting a feel of where are we? What's working? What's growing? We know we're seeing increased activity in Brazil. We know we've got this huge, organization, crew in Australia. How do we replicate that? What's working there and how do we replicate that? And we just don't have that data at the moment. So that kind of stuff to me is exciting and could be extremely useful.
Okay. So we won't have that for the icon, but there is a way.
That's way too soon.
We won't have it for the icon, but there is a way for us to get to that. Okay. There's next topic from there. I want everybody to hear directly from you how to keep up with you, how to keep up, the best ways to keep up with the Noun ecosystem. And we'll link to all of this as well. And then lastly, just, is there anything that we missed that we need to address?
So I'd say there's a few core places where you can get the most information about nouns. And for me, just follow at Prof Order on Twitter is the best place to, see what I'm doing. And I tweet too much. So I'm there a lot. I'm also on Farcaster as Nounish Prof. So I go by the Nounish Professor. So Prof Order on Twitter, the Nounish Prof on Farcaster, and Nounish at Nounish on Twitter or YouTube. Definitely follow them. They have some amazing explainer videos as well. So there is one that is phenomenal. It's actually on the Nouns website, nouns.wtf. And if you look on there, you'll see this incredible, like if you're totally lost, you still have no idea what's going on, start there. Like go watch that video. It's about 11 minutes long, but it's phenomenal. And Becco from Nounish walks you through her experience with a prop house and sort of really, gives a great explanation of nouns. And then lastly, the Noun Square. The Noun Square on Twitter, also on YouTube. They do an incredible job of capturing what's going on in the ecosystem. We have 40 different spaces a week. There's one every day that happens around the Nouns auction. So it means it moves around the clock with the auction. So right now it's around 7 a.m. Eastern, but last week it was at midnight. So it moves. But the Noun Square is definitely, you want to follow them on Twitter and YouTube. And also one last one, Nouns on the Ground and Nouns on the Air. Nouns on the Ground, or OTG, as we like to call them, and that's otg.wtf. That's Toshi. She has a prop where she is going to 18 different events and conferences for a year all over the world, and then she does streaming from there. So she is nounifying the world as we speak, and she's great to follow as well. So those would be my suggestions of where to start and what to learn about nouns, how to learn about nouns. Yeah.
I love it. That's fantastic. I was on the Noun Square Twitter Spaces earlier this morning, and it was hilarious.
Cool.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
hilarious.
We're funny. Yeah.
I was just
We're
drinking.
funny people.
Yeah.
It's like a morning show, no matter what time it is. It's like a crazy morning show.
No, seriously,
and
it was a great morning show. I was drinking coffee, eating my yogurt and granola, and I was just like, "Well, this is a fun little morning show."
It is.
So
it is.
Highly
and you get to help pick. Normally what we do is you get to help pick the next noun. So it's a little tricky now because something is broken called FOMO nouns. But if you have a noun that you're like, what I'd love to see a flamingo head, my favorite. You can, jump on stage and help us pick and be like, I love that one, pick that one. And we'll get it for you. You don't have to buy it. You can just say, I helped pick that one. And it's a lot of fun. So it's a lot of fun. We have a good time, and we usually have an interview that happens. This week we're not doing any because it's been, weird timing. But yeah, and anytime you want to pop up, say hi. We'd love to have you.
Awesome. I love that. Is there anything we missed that we need to cover?
I don't think so. That was very thorough. I could do this. I could talk about nouns all day, and I pretty much do. So if there's something that you come across and you're like, oh, we should have asked her about, and this will happen, by the way, feel free to reach out and I can explain it or, do a follow-up or whatever you need.
Same. If there's things that you come across as we're putting this piece together, just light me up. I'm going to include all of it. Prof Werder, thank you so much. This has been incredible. I enjoyed the conversation. The Noggles are fantastic. And I can't wait to see, this all come to life. And I can't wait to see the future of what Nouns does. So thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
All right. There we go. All right, everybody.
Good? All right.
Yeah. Our crew that joined us and hung around. If you hung around the whole time today, incredible. Thank you, Jonathan.
I should have made a POAP.
We might need to start making POAPs for these live recordings as well. Jonathan, thanks for throwing all that stuff in there.
That was cool.
We featured those, so they were on screen. This is our first time just kind of coming together as a small community and seeing how we kind of like co-create content together and all of this stuff.
I loved that. I loved that you pulled the comment and just pulled it right up on the screen. That was perfect.
That was
amazing.
I was like, I don't know if I'm pushing the right button.
I don't even know how to do, like, that's really cool. Like, that was really cool. I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. Yeah. I was like, ooh, that's a cool feature. And I love, thank you for putting that up, because network is spelled really weird. And I always have to go double check it to make sure I got the right one. And it's pretty new to me. So,
on the spot.
But definitely down the line, you're going to want to reach out to Luca at some point.
Okay.
He may not be an icon yet, but he's pretty close.
So
Pudgy Penguins is like, it's going to blow up so big very soon.
We're going to have such a hard time figuring out who our next icons are. We've got to kind of figure out our own community strategy on how to decide, like, as a collective. The first couple were just basically core team saying, let's do it. Let's run with it. Let's kind of show what this is. And then over time, like, okay, how do we, it's just, I already have a list of 20 and I'm like,
oh, I'm sure.
I don't know. I want to do them all, but I can't really decide which one. I need help. So.
Yeah. Well, that's why you have a community, right? So it seems like, you've got people popping in here. I mean, lean into them. Yeah, for sure. But there's, also like looking to see, Jack Butcher would be incredible.
He's on the list. He's on the list. Pudgy Penguins is on the list.
Yeah, they're doing amazing stuff. I love how, by the way, that there's all this nouns overlap and everything you do. It's kind of fun. Even like, so David Horvath would be amazing too. I don't know if you're familiar with David and Ugly Doll and Bossy Bear, but he is very involved in nouns, and he has a prop with nouns, and he was the one who coined the term that the Noggles are the Nike swoosh for Web3. So he is, in terms of branding, if you haven't read his Substack, go read that. He has a very, very specific approach that you may or may not agree with. But it is a very specific view of branding and brands and building lifestyle brands and character brands. And it's very interesting to listen to him. And he was actually on this morning. I don't know if he came on at the very, very end of the show. He just popped on and was talking about the toys and the sobufu that he has in Japan in these certain like museum shops, and that they're selling out. They're the nouns ones. And they're like, I thought they were going to be there for months, and now they're sold out. And he's like, I wasn't ready for that. I'm like, I was. Wow. I knew that was going to happen, but yeah, it's really interesting. And he's got the #1 show on Nickelodeon right now with Bossy Bear. So he's an interesting guy. You should definitely, that would be another great one for you.
I will. I have so much to dig into.
I'm sure.
I'm going to watch this a couple times. I'm hoping there's an AI tool I can throw it into and it'll give me like a summary. Because I need there's so much we covered. I'd like to just kind of Zinboy, who was on earlier, he'll know. I don't think Nouns AI has that quite yet, but they're doing some stuff with video that's really interesting, but not quite that yet. But soon. Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you again. Thank you so much.
It's been great.
I'll be in touch. I'll let you know everything that's
anything you need.
Out. You'll kind of see behind the scenes.
Yeah, just hit us up with whatever you need. And I think you're already in touch with Toady too. So anything you need, we're happy to help.
Awesome. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.
Been great. All righty. See ya.